Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Satish Rao, Newlab's Chief Product Officer. I'm very excited about the hour that we're going to have together today talking about our 5G studio. Just some quick housekeeping notes just to get started. We're going to have a series of presentations from some really great startups that participate in our program following our introductions by myself and our partners at Verizon. And at the end, we'll end with a moderated session that will have additional Q&A. So we really like the audience members to submit. So feel free to submit through the Q&A button in the Zoom throughout the presentations and the session at the end. We're really excited to use this session to publicly share our great partnership between Newlab and Verizon, which we launched a few months ago. Briefly, Newlab, we are a community of engineers and entrepreneurs, and we work with industry and government partners to apply transformative technologies to the world's greatest challenges. Much of our work happens in the Brooklyn Navy Yard here in our location, which is a beautiful warehouse space that has access to hardware prototyping facilities and hosts over 150 of our frontier tech focused startups that we call our Newlab members. We operate studios that recruit startups to test and pilot solutions for our partners. And so really matching the advanced tech that's happening in the entrepreneurship and startup world to the broad sector challenges and growth opportunities that Verizon and our other corporate partners bring to bear. And so this is how we landed at the 5G studio with Verizon. And so we launched this studio with the intention of bringing a platform that allows startups to develop 5G implementations of their really compelling products and test and pilot that at Newlab. Verizon, we were very lucky to have installed a private 5G network with an on-site multi-access edge computing stack, which is Verizon's largest private network in the country. And so this is a really great opportunity to utilize Newlab space and the Verizon engineering to help these startups that you're going to hear from today really deploy tech for the future. The focus areas that we looked at for this first run of the studio were these four presented here: industrial automation, transportation, energy, and health. And you'll see that represented by each of the companies that you'll hear from today. But first, I wanted to hand it over to our great partners at Verizon's new Business Incubation team and tee up Elise Neel, VP of that group, who've been great partners in the program, really helping us vision out what this program should be, and on the ground, great collaborators with the startups, which I know each of them have appreciated during the pilot. So Elise, we'd love to hear Verizon's point of view, NBI's point of view on 5G, and what we're going to hear from today from these teams.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Elise Neel, and I'm the Vice President of New Business Incubation at Verizon. My team has the very distinct pleasure of building new software businesses that will leverage the 5G future for Verizon. And we are absolutely delighted and really thankful and grateful for the partnership that we have with Newlab, which we're excited to show you the results from our first cohort today. But to spend just a minute level setting on what is this 5G thing and why is everybody so excited about it, I wanted to talk actually first about where we came from. So to level set on what is 5G, when you think about advancements from 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, really in each of those generational components, really two functions were added at each new generation. It was additional speed and additional throughput. The connections got faster and the pipes got wider. But as you'll see on the next slide, one of the things that we are most excited about with 5G is an additional 6 capabilities, or what we call the total 8 currencies of 5G. In addition to blazing fast speeds and really fat pipes, in a 5G world, we ultimately will see up to 20 milliseconds or less of latency, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll see the ability to connect multiple millions of devices. And so today in a 4G world, you can connect up to 1,000 devices per square kilometer. In a 5G world, that goes to 1 million devices up to in a square kilometer. When we think about the speed of mobility and connection, I don't know if any of you have participated on the Acela that moves up and down the East Coast, but it's really hard to maintain a sticky connection. In a 5G world, ultimately, we will see that connection be able to be sticky and maintained at over 300 miles per hour. That is exciting to me and to all of our commuters as we think about what that means for air travel and other components on the ground. And so as we look at each of these components, they offer inherent capabilities that are already built into 5G millimeter wave and ultra wideband spectrum that Verizon has and has deployed. We're still quite early days, which is why we've invited the opportunity for innovators to come right alongside us. And part of the beauty of the partnership that we have with Newlab is this combination of studio, hardware studios, connectivity studios kind of coming together with innovative software companies. it is the combination of both the technology, connectivity, the humanities, the arts, all coming together in a collaborative way to help formulate and forecast the future. And so with that, I will maybe turn it back to Satish for a really exciting overview of some of the amazing companies that we've had an opportunity to partner with.
Thanks, Elise. Yeah, and I have to say, I thought I knew plenty about 5G, but once digging in with you and your team, seeing the value that can be created across all those components you mentioned, I think we're going to see that come to bear in the results from the pilot. So I appreciate that overview for the audience as well. Here's a list of the teams: Ghost Robotics, Exyn Technologies, Foam, Phantom Auto, PantoHealth, and Vecna Robotics. I'll leave the intros to the teams themselves, but it's going to be a great run of presentations. So to kick things off, we're going to turn to Ghost Robotics.
Yeah, thanks. So we set out to Newlab with two of our robots. One is a Vision 60 that you see here, and then our smaller robot, the Spirit 40. And it was honestly one of the easiest integrations that I've ever done in terms of connectivity. We took the puck, plugged it into the robot, and we were up and running with 5G in, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes after we got the IP addresses. So in terms of being, a ready system to deploy, it's there. And we're ready to be able to utilize 5G as soon as we have deployments that can leverage it for all of our use cases. So we're really excited to be able to share this opportunity and what we were able to do with 5G and Newlab.
It's great. Thanks. My name is Jaron Parikh. I'm the CEO of Ghost Robotics. So we develop legged robots. Really, they're mobile IoT platforms, computers with legs. And the objective really is to take any type of sensor communications platform like 5G or small payloads and then bring them out into the field where we're either measuring, inspecting, or securing. The robots themselves are, everybody loves a legged robot, but ultimately it's really, at the end of the day, a mobile IoT platform. And so connectivity is critical. These mobile robots are made specifically for durable, continuous use environments. Most of our customers today, virtually all of them today, are homeland security and military. We are now moving into enterprise applications, including construction, mining, industrial manufacturing facilities. And really the objective here is to take any type of sensor, put it on board the robot, and give it the ability to operate for long endurance over unstructured terrains. That could be anything from stairs to the great outdoors, and bring that sensor to capture data. The challenges, of course, are connectivity. And so having a 5G baseline for telemetry and control of the robot, but also sucking out quite a bit of data from these new sensors is really critical for our customers.
Yeah, so, typically robots and edge devices in general are really, computation restricted and don't have all the things that you would want to be able to do out there on the edge. And so being able to have this huge throughput and send data from the robot to some offload system really expands the capability of the robot and the applications that the robot's able to perform. And so that's really what we were trying to assess, was how much data could we get through from the robot, how much raw sensor data could be pumped up, and then have a system basically process that, send it back down to the robot in real time, and be able to perform the task safely and effectively throughout the entire environment. So we were able to do a handful of things, including offload some of the raw 3D point cloud data. We were able to pilot the robot remotely as well. And this all kind of helps lay the foundation for being able to establish essentially robot-to-robot communication, which then allows these systems to be more aware and, again, accelerating kind of the types of capabilities and features that they're able to do, versus the alternative of saying it can only do a handful of tasks because all of the resources have to be on board. Being able to really get the data out just expands the capability beyond what we would be able to do on the system by itself. And so what we were able to establish was, like I said, some of the 3D data we were able to stream out. The big lesson learned that we had, though, was like any other network communication system, you want to kind of optimize for what it is that you've got. So we spent a lot of time investigating how we can squeeze out the most performance of the 5G system, knowing that the amount of data robots can produce is huge, right? You think of the LiDARs that we put on them, 360-degree visibility from RGB sensors, thermal cameras. That's a lot of throughput that has to come up. And so that was one thing that we were able to kind of assess, was how to optimize this network to get the performance that we need. One of the major highlights that we saw, though, was being able to remotely pilot the robot from some other place. So we had folks actually in California drive the robot in Newlab, and we had folks in our office drive the robot in Newlab, experiencing maybe what was like 20 to 40 seconds of milliseconds of latency. So pretty much non-existent in terms of being able to pilot the robot, which again really helps the end use case for, we've got an operator who's in another country or another state, being able to get in and kind of drive the robot around, investigate different things for the application.
So what's next? So today, we've released this Vision 60 QUGV, a quadrupedal unmanned ground vehicle. We're focused on moving it from teleoperated to autonomous applications. Most of our customers are U.S. and allied government agencies, but we're moving quickly in enterprise, and we see a lot of excitement there. So I think much of our focus over 2021 is going to be moving into the enterprise space. We'll start introducing complete solutions. We're now working with a broad range of sensor partners, AI, and application software developers. So the objective is really not to deliver a legged robot. They're absolutely sexy, but the overall perspective from our standpoint is to deliver a total solution. So we'll start bundling and putting together security solutions, asset management solutions, inspection solutions for all different sorts of markets and industries. Simpler and faster robot control, that is actually part and parcel with communications. And so 5G is going to really drive that. Provisioning and making it easy to use. One of the challenges we have is, these robots can collect a huge amount of data. They're very agile. They move very fast, but they can also be dangerous. So we want to have the ability to lock down security, provisioning, make it bulletproof. And again, this is something that 5G is going to bring to the platform. The future of the product is really the fidelity of life. If you see the videos on our website, our Twitter feed, it is really like a live dog when you're pushing it and moving it around the environment. And we're going to continue improving the speed, agility, the flexibility, and the behaviors to really mimic biology. We're also going to scale. So we want to scale this and reduce costs. We want to get the cost down to a low-cost fiat where you can buy these robots for less than $15,000 eventually, and manufacture them in scale, but also put together solutions in scale. And the underlying IP that drives our legged robots will also appear in other robotic systems, complex electromechanical platforms like robotic arms, human enhancement systems. And so we have a lot of future with the core underlying technology. Ultimately, 5G, where will that be involved? We hope everywhere. I can't tell you that every single government customer we have has asked about improving comms. Certainly in warfighting applications, they're using software-defined radios and very specific equipment that's only useful for a military operator. But a lot of our government applications are for security, inspection, asset protection, asset management, and all of the customers have asked for 5G. We also see 5G as an initial request from all of our enterprise customers. So we're excited to start deploying 5G here in 2021 and piloting it and scaling it into 2022.
Awesome. Thank you, James and Jaren. We have two questions from the audience I think can kind of be combined, and it's around positioning and navigation awareness. How does 5G provide or improve for that in terms of having a denser network indoors and outdoors?
Yeah, it all ultimately comes back down to what can you do on the robot and process the data on the robot. So again, being able to offload some of that requirements to a system, we can help kind of improve the localization part by, providing better or more optimized results of the computation for the localization piece. And again, if you've got multiple robots who actually can observe each other, or we can observe certain things, we could provide the raw data again off to an offload system. It says, hey, I know you're in XYZ coordinate because I know where this thing is, and send that result back to the robot in real time. So it really just helps meld everything and kind of transitions that robot from just this sole isolated thing to more of a data aggregation piece that can move around freely.
Got it. Great, thank you. All right, up next, not too far down the road from Ghost Robotics in Philadelphia is Ben Williams from Exyn Technologies.
Hey folks, thanks for having me. So Exyn Technologies is a world-leading autonomous software company delivering systems that operate independent of GPS, prior maps, known environments, or even a pilot. Developed and honed for punishing and complex underground environments, we're applying those technologies to industrial and government clients around the world. The flexibility of remotely tasking a single system that can operate autonomously both indoors and outdoors totally transforms the commercial and industrial landscape for operations, information, and security. The really key thing here is that our self-contained autonomy is able to fly seamlessly, both indoors and outdoors with no pilot in the loop, setting the stage for distributed industrial autonomy as an extension of your organization's data ecosystem. Next slide. So working with the Verizon and Newlab teams, we sought to take our autonomy and test the viability of remote initiation and data capture, as well as enabling retasking within an environment. This is really critical because our systems right now are built on the assumption that you have someone nearby to initiate the mission, even though the system itself can fly autonomously with nobody in the loop. It still requires that initiation. And so the ability to decouple that means that you then can start scaling this purely from one-to-one mission planner and mission to then having a single person or a group of people initiating dozens, hundreds, or thousands of missions remotely over an internet connection, and most specifically across a the 5G network, which allows you to have a ubiquitous, consistent standard for doing these missions. So with that in mind, what we actually found here was that the short answer was it was a resounding success. We were able to validate all of the core goals of our session, as well as begin the planning process for real-world implementation. We had initially, a lot of our systems use sort of standard Wi-Fi right now. And what that means is that you have to be within range of the Wi-Fi to initiate and to do the download of the data. In many cases, that's fine because you don't have access to other infrastructure. But as 5G becomes more available, even for our underground clients, like in the mining industry, this becomes a much more interesting opportunity because you can get that data much more cleanly, and you can decouple it from a standard Wi-Fi. And also adds increased range of the communications and the operations, because right now, once you get out of comms range, the system still operates, but you can't do retasking. So it enables your ability to be flexible in the middle of the mission as well. Next slide, please. Yep. So what comes next for us? In the next few years, we're already looking at the mining industry for as they start integrating 5G underground and into their industrial environments. This has enabled us also to take steps into other verticals that have heavily industrialized but distributed environments where it's difficult to have complete coverage with Wi-Fi or wired connections or other things like that. So 5G becomes a really great gap solution for those entities to allow them to deploy these kind of systems. The future of the product beyond that, we have this baseline autonomy and sensor fusion capability for distributed systems across industrial, commercial, government, et cetera. But being able to initiate remotely, you can think of this having a system well beyond dense urban areas or areas where you have dense infrastructure. And instead, you can have targeted systems that can remotely initiate once a month, once a week, do inspections, do security, whatever you're looking for can be distributed and tethered to areas that have 5G coverage, which is going to be a huge amount of the country. And really, the way to think about this is that this is one of the fundamental building blocks of the evolution of an entire autonomous layer for every industry. We view the autonomous data collection world as an entire next step beyond what you have with fixed cameras or fixed data collection that only makes sense really in very dense areas of an operation. And similarly, for industries that just are analog right now, don't really have the ability to collect digital data, they can't even take advantage of those tools until they have this scalable, distributed data collection ecosystem that is really driven by the ability to get that information off the robots. And then the last, the last element there was just when you get to the point of having that ecosystem, then the data throughput allows you to programmatically allocate all of those elements across the world.
Mm-hmm. That's great, Ben. It's picking up on that last point you made around sort of an ecosystem of machines, I guess I would say. Swarms of drones is something we vision, but really in the industrial application use case, I can see a scenario where the drone is sort of sending commands and helping automate another system. You and I spoke about gas ventilation at one point.
Yep.
What is Exyn thinking about in terms of sort of really leveraging machine-to-machine communications, especially with 5G?
Sure. So, I mean, a fundamental part of our ecosystem and our architecture, even for the robots, is this concept of collaborative work amongst robots. In some cases, it's called multi-agent collaboration or swarm collaboration. But the basic idea is that you're using multiple robots to share context, information, and initiate actions across the sort of distributed network. And to the extent you're able to do that, it means, as Jiren mentioned, you can have more targeted systems where you might offload some of the compute. You might have different sensor packages across different robots, and all of those collaborating together then make the system as a whole much more powerful, and you can optimize individual elements there to be a lot more flexible. So that all requires bandwidth, it requires communication. You can't have that distributed ecosystem without good, reliable, low latency communications.
Got it. Makes sense. Well, thanks for that, Ben. It was exciting seeing your system fly around Newlab. Thanks for your efforts in the presentation today.
Thanks a lot.
All right, next we have Ryan King, CEO of Foam.
Hi everyone, I'm Ryan, CEO and co-founder of Foam. So at Foam, we're a blockchain-based company, primarily focused around new ways to do localization as well as autonomous-based IoT agents. We're really excited in the studio to take the opportunity to further explore industrial IoT use cases, new kinds of blockchain architectures across the MEC, and further advance our Foam and location-based protocols. We're based out of the Newlab, and we're really excited to have this partnership develop and further advance our technologies. So as mentioned, Foam. So as mentioned, Foam is a blockchain-based company and we focus on things like crowdsourced maps, decentralized location services, with a focus on secure location verification and different kinds of IoT sensors. Our main vision is that reliance on GPS is continuing to grow, and so are vulnerabilities. And we're looking to provide secure location services that can work completely independently of GPS with cryptographic location proofs to unlock new kinds of value and automation. So in this studio, we had a number of different goals, and one was to explore IoT use cases across different kinds of authentication mechanisms and automation. We were also looking to authenticate location of objects across the Brooklyn Navy Yard, where we have our hardware currently installed, as well as make headway on exploring what it means for the Foam software to be radio agnostic and also run directly on hardware such as the 5G base stations. And one thing we were looking to firmly accomplish was to automatically trigger an action via a smart contract on the blockchain via an IoT sensor that can go through a relayer. And what's shown here on the screen is one of the demos we developed called Foam Lite, which is an on-the-ground Ethereum relay network for autonomous and secure IoT transactions. So one of the main learnings and successes we found through this studio is actually the MEC infrastructure for computation. A lot of bottlenecks around blockchain infrastructure is scalability, and wanting to verify the chain yourself, you have to run a lot of infrastructure in terms of a full node. So being able to run that infrastructure directly on the MEC right where the activity is happening contributes to data locality as well as decentralization that blockchain applications strive for. We made further headway on how customers will use presence claims, which are location proofs made without GPS, and how they can be integrated into automated factory-based settings. And we also learned a lot about how these kind of scalable blockchain networks can be built, utilizing all of the benefits of speed, latency, and computation that 5G can bring. So what's next for Foam? In the immediate, we'll be making this Foam Lite IoT Relayer demo available to the public that they can replicate And within the next year, we'll be launching our location-based network that's independent of GPS. And we see within 5 years, secure location proofs becoming an industry standard that can unlock all different kinds of automation, as well as marketplaces around verified location data. The future of our product will be continuing to innovate on open source and powerful hardware, as well as expand this software into existing networks and ongoing deployments such as 5G. And we see 5G being involved in being able to help with the computation and verification, as well as new means of doing localization, all independent of GPS, with the additional power and valuability of verified location and blockchain-based applications.
Fantastic, Ryan. One of the things that came up in our conversations with you is around the application of GPS spoofing. And so using your platform and the way you're describing it to basically protect against that. So just curious if you can comment briefly on what you're hearing from industry between their needs and the gap and what's available today in terms of technology and how you think the foam protocol and product can solve that.
Sure. So I think like where the biggest bottleneck is right now is in industrial use cases where there are high value assets that maybe either get lost due to the fact they're underground and GPS doesn't work, or a lot of kind of theft and bad actors can kind of mess with those signals because they don't have these kind of cryptographic signatures. So you can kind of change your location data. Something foam strives to do is generate what we call these presence claims, location proofs that could only be generated by interacting with that system. Using the 5G architecture that can be computed and verified there. And there are a lot of benefits with new ways 5G can do localization, where you can generate those kind of proofs directly over the baseband and have kind of foam working as a new software service in the 5G ecosystem.
Got it. Yeah, when you start to really dig into the costs that are rising from GPS spoofing and potentially what you can solve, I think there's a huge ROI potential there. Thanks for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks.
All right, up next we have Phantom Auto. Jordan.
Oh man, classic. It had to happen to me. I was on mute. Sorry about that, guys. So Jordan Sanders, Director of Business and Operations at Phantom Auto. Happy to have the chance to speak to everyone today, and we're really excited to have the chance to pilot with Newlab. What Phantom Auto does is teleoperation for any type of unmanned vehicle. So everything from robots to cars to trucks to forklifts and more. With Newlab, we were excited to test out the Verizon 5G. And as you can see in this video, we used an R&D kind of robot to test out the communication capability, what could be achieved over 5G. And we were pretty happy about the results. Let's see, what do we have here? Yeah, so we were happy about the results. So as Phantom Auto, again, our focus is purely on teleoperation, meaning really meaning real-time communication. And a lot of our kind of core technology and proprietary technology is around ensuring reliable connectivity in any type of network environment. Because we have customers who are operating over public LTE, operating things like delivery robots, to warehouse environments, operating things like forklifts, often leveraging Wi-Fi. That all we do is think about network communication and reliability. And at the end of the day, what all of that enables is a human to remotely operate any type of vehicle. And so we focus both on the quantitative assessment of the performance of the network, of course, but at the end of the day, it's really all about the ability for a human sitting hundreds to even thousands of miles away to have the ability to accurately see the scene, meaning high resolution and high FPS video, and see it in as close to real time as possible, meaning the lowest latency. So any as communication networks improve and evolve, we as Phantom Auto want to be kind of on the forefront of working with folks like Verizon to leverage those to the best extent, all for the purpose of, again, delivering that best experience for the remote operator of these vehicles. You can go to the next slide. So our goal here with The work with in the Newlab was again to assess that 5G and really again get all the way to the end kind of user experience and understand the benefits to the user for his or her ability to operate the vehicle. We were really encouraged by the results, and so maybe if we want to go to the next slide here. Yeah, so we were really encouraged by the results. A few things that we accomplished. We were remotely operating the robot in Newlab from an operator console in Mountain View, California. So someone sitting about 3,000 miles away was controlling the robot in real time. We did observe that there was a higher bandwidth available. And so what that led to was more consistently high resolution and FPS, which means a better user experience. And the other thing that we were excited to see both on the technical side and from talking with the Verizon team is we were really excited about how our customers can utilize 5G for deployments. We really see a lot of opportunity and kind of need in the enterprise market for deploying even private 5G networks and unlocking new use cases. So for Phantom, kind of what we see moving forward, our biggest kind of customer base at this point is in the logistics sector, particularly warehouse robots, warehouse forklifts, and yard trucks. So all of those vehicles are things where we see unmanned operation being extremely viable in the near term. And what our technology brings to the table and to our customers is kind of guaranteed uptime and safety and operational scalability. So when you have a remote human in the loop who's able to assess a situation and help out a vehicle in whatever way is needed, sometimes that's real-time driving, sometimes it's selecting a path on a screen or giving some input to the robot. Whatever that may be, we see that as obviously the remote operation as key for scalable deployment, and where we see that scalable deployment happening is in these kind of warehouse environments. So we're really excited not only about the public 5G network, but I think especially about the deployments of more private and dedicated 5G for enterprise environments in and around warehouses to unlock these kind of new capabilities and scale to many more vehicles. So that's really where we see us moving forward is scaling up in terms of number of vehicles with our existing customer base, and also unlocking new use cases and customers with the rollout of improved networks like 5G. And that's it.
Awesome. Jordan, we know in terms of teleoperating cars in the street, so the correcting for errors and things like this, there's a back and forth between human in the loop versus automated commands, but certainly in an enterprise scenario, we want those skilled workers in the loop. Can you speak more about the importance of your technology being able to enable human in the loop for your customer segments?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really interesting, especially as we work in the enterprise sector, meaning things like forklifts, yard trucks, et cetera. One of the things that we're seeing is that our customer base, has obviously an existing labor force, right, that can be leveraged and actually wants to be kind of the future, right, of the kind of the upgrading of their fleet. And when they hear, sometimes when the existing workforce starts to hear automation, that can sound like a 4-letter word. And one of the things that we're seeing is, and one of the things we're partnering with customers on, is actually enabling their current workforce to not become coders. Snap of a finger, they're probably not going to be upskilled to become software engineers, right? But if you're an existing driver of a forklift today, it's a very straightforward process to become, say, a forklift remote driver, a forklift remote operator. So we're really excited and frankly just pumped up to see those sorts of things kind of bubbling up and coming together in real time, and see the value of kind of giving blue collar workers almost white collar privileges, right, of being able to work remotely from anywhere. So pretty cool stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Cool. Appreciate that, Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next we have PantoCare. Fabio.
Hello, good morning. So we are very excited to share what PantoCare has been building here at the Verizon's 5G studio at Newlab. So in essence, what PantoCare provides is a virtual care, virtual exams that complement virtual care. So even though there's a high demand for virtual care in the midst of a pandemic, the reality is that very little can be done in terms of medical evaluation without actual diagnostics tests, blood sample collection, or the physical examination. So we are PantoCare closing this gap to expand the scope of what can be done with telemedicine. And we are doing that with complete medical exams that can be performed wherever the patient chooses to be. And for that, we are leveraging Verizon's 5G that enables remote guidance of our examiners, the Ponto examiners, by physicians in our own AI decision support system, and that's delivered through augmented reality. Let's see more details about what you're doing here. So you see, as you see in the picture here, we are using 5G to enable a live supervision of that experience that you see in the picture. And you are doing that by recording the patients in their home, but you're also excluding anything that's not the patient through this automated privacy filter, so that no data about the patient's environment gets out of the home. So, and you're also emulating, what you're doing here is to enable the doctor to be working through the hands of the examiner, and you're emulating the doctor to have this first person interaction of with the patient and the data coming from the patient through this low latency, high throughput system that the 5G supports. And finally, we are doing the feedback loop, utilizing augmented reality also to deliver feedback coming from the doctors to the Ponto examiners, and that's delivered through the AR goggles to the HoloLens computer that shows all the information without the patient sees any of this feedback. And more broadly, we are leveraging this 5G connectivity to make this routine care available anywhere the patient needs to be, especially outside of the clinics that became unattractive in these COVID times. So next. So let's talk about the success in learning. So let me actually go through this quick video that shows our bringing the Ponto set, which is basically a computer that brings the clinic to the home. We have an examiner, dedicated trained examiner that does the exam. That exam is supervised by the doctor that's remotely, seeing everything as if they're looking over the examiner's shoulders. The doctor can see all the data real time, can see the patient real time, and can have everything that's pretty much like it's done in the clinic. So you see that this is something that you'll be able to do through simulated physician-guided exams using the ultra-wideband 5G. So with that, you can use multiple channels. Like I mentioned, there will be multiple channels that are like from the diagnostic device and the exam. But you're also secondarily working with the commercial 5G with Verizon to perform these real-world exams in major healthcare systems in the New York area. So this is something that it's really changing the game in terms of what can be done remotely in ambulatory care. And finally, we're deploying this AI privacy filter that automatically excludes the information that's not medically relevant to the doctors that order the exams. So finally, let's look at the future. Next slide. So we're ambitious. We see that in a few years, we want to progressively mobilize these medical exams to a point that most of these clinic visits for medical evaluations become unnecessary. We know that doctors can interact with their patients remotely, and we, PantoCare, can provide this physical element that enables this patient to be evaluated wherever they need to be. And in terms of the future, our future is centered on automation. We're building this guidance system that in the beginning is using the live feedback from the doctor, but over time we want to create a learning mechanism so that all the feedback is done automatically and delivered to the augmented reality. And finally, you see that all of this really relies a lot on 5G connectivity and high performance computing. So both 5G and mobile edge computing would be something that's really important for what we're doing, but also enable us to do things with a lighter footprint. So that's it about PantoCare. Any
Awesome.
questions?
Thank you very much. Yeah. So tell me, like, what is the ceiling? How far can we go in terms of bringing the exams to the patient's home? I mean, there's so many different exams I can take going to a hospital. We're talking ophthalmology now, MRI tomorrow. What's the ceiling, or what's the limit here? And how is 5G perhaps increasing that limit?
Great question. So it really feels like you're in the right place in the right time, because as we speak, there's a technology being developed for even the high end of the equipment, the high end ultrasound, the high end X-ray based images, computer tomography, and high end magnetic resonance imaging. All of that is becoming smaller and smaller. So in the period of 5 to 10 years, those things are going to be mobilizable to a point that can be brought to a home or to a small space. But even between now and then, we can pretty much bring if I look at the market now, we can technically bring at 85 to 90% of the exams that are currently done in the clinics. Of course, we in the near future, we're still excluding anything that relates to procedures. We want those things to still be done in the clinics for the near future, until we can play with robotics and more advanced. But I think this is really kind of more like 10 years plus away.
Well, great, Fabio. Thank you. And I know you've got some pilots in the field in flight before the end of the year as well. So looking forward to seeing those results too. But thank you.
Thanks for everything, Satish.
All right, last but not least, of course, is Vecna Robotics.
Thanks, Satish. So hi, everyone. My name is Matt Sharuk. I'm the Director of Business Development at Vecna Robotics. Here at Vecna Robotics, we are a warehouse automation company focused on autonomous forklifts and similar equipment. One of the features of our system is that it's the ability to live stream data. And so we were really excited to partner with Newlab and Verizon for utilizing 5G to expand the capabilities of live streaming that data and see what that can do in terms of current performance of the units as well as future capabilities. So as I mentioned, we're a warehouse automation company. There's really 3 components of Vecna's system. One is we have a variety of different autonomous pieces of equipment, as our pallet jack you can see here. We also have a AI-based fleet optimization software that's designed to work across the full warehouse, looking at everything happening around it and how to optimize work getting done. And then we have that data streaming capability, which gets pumped back into the system to improve it over time. And so we've seen a lot of benefit with our current solutions out in the field. And with 5G specifically, we were really looking to see what kind of results we could get from improving that performance. And so the work we did at Newlab involved streaming data from the robots, including 3D point clouds and all the sensor data through Vecna's normal support infrastructure over 5G to compare how we did, how that would work versus Wi-Fi. And we saw just fantastic results from that. And then we wanted to see what we could do if we could stream that data to an edge compute device and what kind of capabilities that can unlock. And so we also worked with the MEC architecture provided by Verizon and streamed the data through there. And we saw additional significant performance improvement, I think on the lines of 40% or so. And there's really a lot of exciting things we can do there in terms of offloading non-critical functions of the robot, such as, tracking and locating inventory and processing machine learning and high intensive computer vision algorithms. And so we're really excited by that. The data that we were using during the pilot went to a VR headset, and that VR headset allowed remote operators to dial in and see what the robots were seeing. And so that gives the warehouse operators a lot of visual context as to what's going on in their building, and if the robots do encounter situations where they need input, it allows them to get much better contextual awareness than a typical system would do. And so similar to a lot of the other robotics companies here, the combination of the high bandwidth and the low latency really was fantastic for improving performance of the current robots, and then offloading that computation to the mech instead of going through Vecna's normal support channels, again, just further improved performance, and it unlocked significant more power that we could process more functionality on the robots and see what we could do for fleet optimization as a whole. And so where we're currently at, so Vecna is currently scaling with several large customers across different industries. The robots that you saw here were primarily focused on floor level movements, but we just announced the release of a autonomous counterbalance forklift, which allows us to get into vertical racking applications. And 5G, we think, is going to be really a critical part of that for processing all of that data, performing that safely, and helping us to build out that partner ecosystem. In terms of the future, Vecna, we have our own robots, but where we really think the robots are just a tool in automating a process. And so for us, it's really about how do you optimize workflows and what are the different tools you need to do to make that all happen? And so that involves multi-robot systems, and what we refer to as interoperability, or for all these different robots from different vendors to talk together. And so on the Vecna side, we're building out our pivotal platform and that orchestration component to enable this. But 5G specifically, we think, is going to be really important for that infrastructure and providing, a common baseline of communication across all these different systems, and unlocking the potential to do all these real-time edge applications so that these systems can perform individually at their own critical function, and then meet in the middle and be able to process all that data and work together. So we're really excited to see how far we can take that.
Fantastic. Yeah, that was it was stellar seeing that system operate in Newlab, and I did get a chance to try on the VR headset as well. Whether it's VR or AR or not, there seems to be a focus, at least, on really creating a compelling built environment around the operator. And so, can you speak a little bit more about that? Is this about translating the skill sets today, or do you think you're elevating sort of the abilities of the operator to do more than they can if they're physically operating the heavy machinery on the ground?
It enables operators of both the equipment and kind of the supervisors to perform at a higher level, right? So if you're thinking about what happens today, somebody's on the forklift and that person needs to radio home to somebody in the back office and tell them what's going on. They have to pull up a spreadsheet of what's going on with the current WMS system, and there's just kind of a lack of visibility and communication and awareness of how you can deal with these situations. But if you're dealing in a roboticized world, where you have mostly autonomous agents, you have manual workers there for exceptions or things that robots can't necessarily handle yet today. And then you do have a supervisor that is able to receive data from individual local people, find out what's going on in the environment, and then zoom back out again and get that full situational awareness. We think that there's a lot of potential there. So it's really about both, right? It's the supporting each individual local agent, so upskilling current warehouse forklift operators, as well as providing more data to people who are overseeing the whole operation.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, we'll cover that a little bit more, I think, in the moderated session. Appreciate it. All right. I think everybody can turn their videos and mics on. Elise, first question actually turning to you. It's since the beginning. First of all, that was pretty great. And so we're seeing a lot of startups really thinking hard about 5G, and some of them are really getting customer feedback now that this is coming. Why should companies like these, who are mature, have products in market and established engineering teams, be early adopters of 5G or be thinking about it now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, if that just doesn't excite you, what we just walked through today, I'll maybe pull out a couple of things that come to mind when you said that. Jiren talked about making his robot like a Fiat. and reducing that bill of materials to something that is a lot more palpable by leveraging the power of the 5G network. We would call that a thin client. That's a huge opportunity to accelerate adoption from a hardware perspective. And then I love how Jordan also talked about automation and how that today is like seen as a bit of a 4-letter word, but with 5G, it's now an invitation to rethink the skill sets of our workforce and invite them into a world where more is possible. But kind of beyond the both hardware side and the human side of it, I think ultimately what we saw in 4G was brand new ecosystems come online. We now have brand new social ecosystems that did not even exist in a 3G world. We have the gig economy. We have brand new financial ecosystems and others. And similar to that, we also see 5G as an opportunity to create entirely new ecosystems as well, for the ones that we have to adapt and change, but also for this to be a creation as we kind of move into this 4th industrial revolution. And so I think it's really an invitation for the developers and the innovators to kind of think about what their future would look like. How might we have new societal ecosystems that leverage technology to make this world a better place? Like, that's a pretty exciting opportunity to kind of get involved with from the start.
Got it. Yeah, and so on that last point, building that ecosystem, I think, Jaren, we talked a lot about how the Ghost system is really trying to become this 4-legged but open platform, and Elise just touched on that. So can you maybe follow up and talk about how you see this sort of playing out for Ghost in terms of an open sensor platform, and where the connectivity and being able to take the compute off the hardware can really help that?
Yeah, we've been building this robot since 2015, and Gavin and Avik, my co-founders, they're doing their PhD work, 4 years prior to this on this fairly complex tech. And then boom, all of a sudden we have this walking robot, Vision 6, and everybody's clapping. And then the question is, now what? And so, you can throw sensors on there all day long, and that's pretty easy, right? Sensor prices are coming down. They're shrinking in size, but they're collecting huge amounts of data. So there's a conundrum there. Like, first of all, you got to control these robots. And today, when you imagine a drone operator or a guy operating a robot, listen, in a warfighting solution where they're trying to clear a floor, yeah, they've got teleoperated, control units with them. It's joysticks, an Xbox controller. But the vast majority of deployments we're seeing now in the future that are going to scale, the operator is not there. So they're in some central room or it's fully autonomous. Second thing James talked about was there's no simple deployment of enterprise software. It's all hybrid. Part of it's here, part of it's there. The folks that want to have control over these robots, security, some are on-site, some are off-site. Something has to be operated from a network operation center. So the bandwidth aside, you need kind of this communications platform. And it's always like the comms thing that gets in the way of building a beautiful product. So now if we have 5G and we can solve the bandwidth issue, the most important thing is if we can solve, provisioning, security. If I pick that robot up, we've got a whole bunch of small ones we're developing. If you take it out of the Pelican box, you deploy it here in this factory or that factory, it just automatically connects. Somebody can provision it, it recognizes it on the network, and it's completely seamless. That would be awesome. So I think it's coming, and hopefully 5G will kind of bring that ecosystem platform capability to these mobile robots.
So as we're, and so you mentioned security, that this came in the Q&A, and this was pointed at Matt at Vecna, but I'm gonna also ask Fabio and Elise also to comment as well, is security in the cyber sense, right? So if we're building these open platforms, we're doing tons of machines and all sorts of sensor fusion happening, how are we thinking about cybersecurity on your systems going forward, and where does 5G enhance that? So Matt, maybe you can touch on that first, since that first question was directed to you.
Yeah, sure. So, since we're operating in the logistics space and we even have robots in the DLA, the Defense Department's distribution centers, security is a major issue, and these are all considered mission critical systems, right? And so when you're dealing with robots specifically, there's certain functions that will absolutely need to stay on the robot, and then there are other ones that will be able to be processed over 5G. And I think that 5G really just enables much more, private and what's the word I'm looking for? Separated networks, so that all these systems don't necessarily expose risk directly to user data coming from like a traditional system that we're seeing.
Yeah, I'll just maybe piggyback on that a little bit. So I think that's absolutely correct. And, I think there are a number of things that we do just by the very nature that we support, hundreds of millions of customers on our network today, and all of that same expertise that we deploy to keep our network and our customers safe on the 4G side will absolutely continue into the 5G future. And while for a wide variety of reasons, I will not share with you all of the things that we're doing to protect our network, the reality is that there are new opportunities to think through with each of these kind of currencies that we talked about in the beginning. They have inherent capabilities to both enable, but also to protect. And so in the same way that we've seen an amazing, panel today of innovators, we haven't specifically talked about innovations in cyber, which I think are going to be pretty profound from a 5G perspective. And so maybe Satish, you and I can talk a little bit offline about what a next cohort might be around those areas, but it is a really big emergent opportunity as well. We've seen blockchain be used here inside of this cohort. I think there's some really interesting components around quantum that we can also evaluate. And when you begin to pair that with comms, it gets really interesting.
Yeah, got it. And Fabio, I think that's important for health as well. In terms of patient data and HIPAA compliance and things like this. Like how do you think, you talked about this a bit yesterday when we were checking in, how do you think your product in 5G can really enable that as you're taking the exams outside the hospital?
Yeah, exactly. Just to contextualize, security and privacy, like I touched upon, is not nice to have, it's a law, right? The HIPAA is a law that guides that. So we are building everything with the security by design and privacy by design. And these computers that are on the network are transmitting things to the doctor, a peer-to-peer encrypted, a peer-to-peer connection that are just existing in that scenario of the exam. And once it's off, and there's nothing else that can be penetrate that relationship. So we are building that in a way, so the hardware itself moves around, the piece moves, the exam equipment moves around, but once it gets activated, it just does the job and nothing else. So it is critical, and 5G can enable this. The telecommunication infrastructure with Verizon can enable that type of infrastructure that can be monitored, can be put in place for the data transfer to be happening in a secure fashion.
Got it. And so broadening this back out away from security, there was a question that came in about 5G versus Wi-Fi. And so Elise, I wanted to turn to you first to tee this up, and then we can turn to, I think, some folks that might see what they're hearing from their customers. But within areas like manufacturing, what is NBI seeing in terms of 5G versus Wi-Fi, the way the benefits there?
Yeah, one of the kind of critical conditions for all of the work that my team is doing is ensuring that the software businesses that we're building are truly better on 5G, because ultimately as a customer, if there's a cheaper, better, faster way to do it, that's what you're going to select. And so I think actually the cohorts, most of them, if not all of them, have actually tried to test their exact solutions using Wi-Fi, and it's just not sustainable. So you have environments where you need persistent connection with ubiquitous connection throughout the entirety of a facility. You also have dirty, dull, and dangerous tasks that need to be kind of overridden in kind of generally problematic spaces. So I know Exyn talked about, mining facilities, nuclear power plants, warehousing facilities built with steel. I will say that just in all honesty, we are at the cusp of deploying 5G, and we went through a lot of challenges. Newlab is a quite hostile environment to deploy 5G. I mean, it's like all steel and glass. And so refraction was really challenging to work through, but it was certainly a problem that Wi-Fi also couldn't solve. When we look at those currencies, when we look at that throughput, that persistence of connection, that ultra reliability, 5 nines minimum of reliability as we get to scale, the energy efficiency, et cetera, that's just something that no other technology, including Wi-Fi, can go against. But I'd love to actually hear from the cohorts, because many of them actually did some side-by-side comparisons that were pretty dramatic. Yeah, let's make that the final comment. Does someone want to comment on what they saw with the Wi-Fi versus 5G in the lab particularly?
So I guess I can jump in here. So there's actually two critical elements from my perspective. The first of which was that generally we found the range was better with 5G than Wi-Fi, and that's a pretty critical element because you just extend your operating envelope a bit. And the other is actually a little bit unrelated to the specific performance, but it's the concept of typically when you have Wi-Fi networks, those are often ones that you have to deploy and you have to put in place, and it's not trivial to try and do a real long distance Wi-Fi mesh or high area coverage Wi-Fi mesh. And if you go location to location, then you almost guaranteed it's not going to be the same Wi-Fi network. And so you have to make sure you've got different credentials and you've got coverage from these sort of disparate areas and everything. So when you think about ubiquitous coverage and being able to transit external areas or go location to location, Wi-Fi probably can't solve that. Even if you assumed that it was equivalent in bandwidth or something like that, there's still a much bigger benefit to having a ubiquitous coverage, which is in this case, this third-party network that is consistent across all these different locations. So that's, from our perspective, that is as important as the actual bandwidth and performance.
I'd just like to add that there are full businesses like ours, PantoHealth, that relies on mobile solutions. So Wi-Fi would not give us the functionality, number one, and security that we need.
Yeah, and I'd say additionally, if you're going out to a deployment site and there is an existing Wi-Fi network, it's most likely, used, and there's other things that are on that. And if you start putting a bunch of robots on that same Wi-Fi network, you're going to crush the bandwidth completely, and basically everyone's going to have a bad time. So the 5G there, having the bigger bandwidth, really can support a more sustainable, network topology than you would with Wi-Fi. And of course, you also do get the kind of, they're just bigger beasts in terms of like the 5G and the LTE antennas and the way that they're set up. Right, they're designed differently than what Wi-Fi, even Wi-Fi Max.
Yeah. There's like whole physical issues. I mean, just think about it. The Wi-Fi, it's a pain in the ass. You show up in these enterprises, like, we need to get on your Wi-Fi network, and you got to go through like, a lot of layers, right, just to get on it. I mean, if I want to make a cell phone call from a factory, I just get on the phone and make a call. From a pragmatic perspective, I'd rather have Verizon or a large carrier managing my network, because you guys get bombarded with people trying to break in. You understand the system. This is your SLA day in, day out, right? That network to work, versus all these, private focused Wi-Fi systems. It's challenging. And they weren't ever deployed to take on all the data that was captured by these large sensor arrays on a mobile device. Maybe fixed sensors, telemetry, a small amounts of data packets coming from a valve or a gauge or other fixed sensors that are in a factory. They're just not made for large streams of data. So that's a challenge too.
Well, appreciate the conversation. I know it's short. That was a lot of work that happened over the past few months, packed in a 60-minute discussion, but it was an incredible thing to see. I really was personally lucky to see this happen live at Newlab. And so really, really thank you to the teams. And I want to leave the last word to Elise in terms of what you see and what exciting about the future here.
Yeah, we're so grateful for the partnership with Newlab, and we're grateful for the companies who came on this first adventure with us. I think there's absolutely more to be had, and we talked about some ideas of future cohorts here today, but I'll just kind of create the invitation again to those explorers who are ready to kind of dangle on the edge of possible. We're here, and Verizon is committed to innovating alongside of you, and we are just dangerously excited about the future. So thank you so much for the time today, and hope everybody learned a thing or two as we went through it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.